Today we're going to be talking about this effect on the Azab website. So when I move my mouse around the page, we get this drawing effect. So you can see as I move around, the image gets drawn again and again and again. So it almost looks like it layers up. Now this might remind you of the winning Solitaire style thing from Microsoft in the 90s. So we have this kind of same style effect. We're drawing lots of things over each other. Now, our site is going to look something like this. So when I move my mouse around the page, it draws multiple times. Now we're going to add in some different style of effects as well. So if I click on the page, we'll change the image as well. Now I'm using some photos by Paweł Czerwiński. Now they're using from Unsplash, so you can just grab them, any of your own. You can even use your own in this project. We're going to talk about this in 3 different parts. The first part is we'll set up a canvas tag, which is how we draw these images, and just draw one image whenever we move the mouse. So this image will be hooked exactly to the mouse to begin with. On number 2, what we'll talk about is how we click to change. So when I click, the image changes to a different one that we're trying to draw. And the third one is we'll add this kind of movement in as well. So it doesn't go instantly to the mouse. We kind of get this effect where it moves towards the mouse over time. So we'll talk about this in this project. So I've just set up a quick project that looks something like this. At the moment, if I move my mouse on the page, nothing happens. So let's just talk about what I've done to set this page up. So quickly, all I've done is added a H1 tag with all paintings in here, and then a link to our Instagram. And if I look at our style sheet, what we have is basically a web font in here, and we've got some basic styling, black background, white text. In my H1 is fixed to the top left corner. My A tag with my Instagram is in the top right corner, and at the bottom I just kind of want to have this mix blend mode difference, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I've also added in all of my images. Each of my images is sized at 800 by 1200, and that's because I want to make them retina friendly. We're going to do this at half the size. We're going to do it at 400 by 600 when we draw. So at the moment we've just doubled it and exported it in that way. So the first thing we're going to do is actually add a canvas tag to my HTML because I want to basically draw on my page. So in my index.html, I'm going to add in a canvas tag. Now at the moment that nothing goes inside of this, just exists as a tag. And if we look at the page right now, it kind of looks the same. Now what I want to do is style this to be across the entire page itself. How do I do that? I need to add some code that tells Canvas what to do. What do we want to draw on the page? Where do we want to draw it on the page? How should this even work? So this is what I need to do with a JavaScript file. Now I'm going to make a new script tag here, and I'm going to call it something like drawer. So you can call this whatever you like. Something that draws things is a drawer.js file. Just needs to be something that's kind of makes sense to you. At the moment, I've got an empty file. I need to add this to my index.html. Where do I do this? I'm going to do this below my canvas tag. So I'm going to add a script tag first of all, script, and I need to pull in my drawer.js file. So in here, I'm going to pull in using the source src. This is going to be equal to something quotes. What do I want this to be equal to? Well, I just made a file called drawer.js, drawer.js. Now currently my drawer.js is currently blank, there's nothing in there, so nothing will happen at the moment. So if I go back to my page, move on the page, obviously nothing happens. But let's start to think about what we need to add into my JavaScript. Well, the first thing I need to do is add some code that sets up my canvas. So the first thing I need to do is grab this canvas tag and set it up. Now I want to set it up for both retina and non-retina as well, so I need to think about that as we start. So the first thing we're going to do is grab our canvas tag. So I'm going to save this to a constant called canvas tag. Now we just made that name up. It doesn't mean anything. I can call it whatever I want. Could be called canvas, could be called potato. It's up to us. This is going to be equal to something. What do we want to pick out of our page? Well, we need to pick something out of our page. So the page in JavaScript is called a document. And what do we want to use? What do we want to grab off the shelf within JavaScript to grab tags? So here, what we want to grab is the query selector. So we're going to use dot query selector. Now this is just a tool built into JavaScript, but we want to use this. So to use this, we use round brackets. What do we want to use? Well, we want to grab a certain tag. Which tag? Well, canvas. Canvas isn't a special word in JavaScript, so we're going to put it in quotes, canvas. So this just basically holds on to one thing, a canvas tag. So at the moment, nothing happens in here. The next thing we want to do is set this up. We want to give it a certain width and height. Now this is going to be across the entire page, but we could set it to be a certain number instead. It's up to us. We don't know the certain number because we don't know what our user is looking at the project on. They could be looking at it on a mobile device, a tablet, or a large screen like this. So we need to set it up for that user. To do that, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a canvas.width. And this is going to be equal to, canvas tag.width. And this is going to be equal to how wide the screen is, window.inner width. We also want to set up a height for this as well. So canvas tag.width and height. And this one is going to be equal to the window.inner height. Now, one thing we need to do is set this up for Retina as well. So what I'm going to do is just multiply both by 2. So times 2 times 2. But the downside of doing this is it makes our canvas tag really big. You can see these scroll bars start to appear up and down the page. So how do we fix that? So to fix this, what we're going to do is say the CSS style of this canvas, not the canvas drawing area, is going to be half the size. So our canvas tag is going to have a style.width. So this one is our CSS, and the one above is just our drawing area. This one is going to be exactly the window width, plus in px, because obviously CSS needs some unit with this. And also, similar, what we need is a height as well, and this one is an inner height plus px. Now what we'll get at the moment is this sets up our page without any scroll bars, which is kind of what we want. There is a tiny little scroll bar that you might notice down here. And the reason for that is our canvas element is an inline tag, which means there's a little bit of space at the bottom. So to get rid of that, we're going to go to our style sheet. And in our style sheet, we're just going to say canvas. Our vertical alignment on our inline tag is right at the bottom. So it doesn't sit on the baseline of text, it sits right at the bottom, so there's no underneath space. So now we should see that if we scroll in either way, our canvas is set up. The next thing we want to do is set up our canvas's context. Now what do I mean by that? Canvas can have multiple ways of doing things. It can do things in 3D, it can do things in 2D, and there's a lot of different ways we can actually draw in a canvas. So the next thing we're going to do is set up a new constant based on this canvas tag. So what I'm going to do is a new constant called context. Now this is a common thing that you'll see in any kind of canvas documentation. Which context are we drawing things in? Are we doing it in 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, which doesn't exist, but we could have that in 2030, let's say. So what we're going to say here is we want to draw our canvas tag. We want to get the context in brackets in a 2D way. So we want to draw in a 2D canvas tag. Now with this, we also want to say a certain scale, like we're going to do things based on Retina, which is in double the pixel density. So our context also has a scale 2 across and 2 down. So basically this is the coordinates that we're setting up here. We've gone at double, so we're saying to our context, this is already double, so we kind of get Retina friendly canvases. Now this is just basic setup that we would do for any canvas tag that we want to draw inside of. If you want to draw lines or circles or squares or rectangles, this is how we do the same thing. Now what do we want to draw in here instead? Well, we want to draw in our whole canvas tag an image. Which image do we want to draw? Well, we want image 1 to start with, or image 2, or image 3, or image 4. So let's get one of these to start with. So my images aren't tied up with my index.html or my drawer.js at the moment. So what do we want to do? Well, in my JavaScript, I want to make a new image tag from scratch. So to do that, we're going to make a new constant called image. And this is going to be equal to, well, it's not just going to be image1.jpg. We want to make an image tag. So to do that, in our page, in our document, we want to get something from the shelf using a dot, and we want to make something, we want to do something using JavaScript. Now, part of JavaScript we can use is a create element. What do we want to do with create element? Well, we want to run it. So we want to run it using round brackets. And then what do we want to put in here? What kind of tag is this? Well, if we did an image tag in HTML, we would use img. So we need this in quotes. img isn't a special word. Now this is going to create an image thing that we're holding, an image constant, an image variable that we can do stuff with. Now, what do we want to do with this image? Well, at the moment, it's just an empty image tag. We want to tell it what source it should be. So just like we did with our script tag, our image has an src, a source, that's equal to something. We want it to be equal to the first image for now. So in quotes, we're going to say image1.jpg. So we've got our canvas set up, we've got our context set up, we've got our image set up. Now, how do we actually draw things on the page? What I want to do is when I move my mouse around the entire document on the entire page, I want to draw on my canvas tag. But in which context? In the 2D context. So that's the next thing I'm going to think about. So on my document, I want to move my cursor. So I want to listen out for any mouse movements. So to do that, I'm going to do on my document an add event listener. And I want to do two things in here. I want to run this and say, listen out for, in quotes, mouse move. And when you listen to a mouse move, as soon as it does move, do something. So after this quote, we're going to do comma, function, round brackets, curly brackets. So just watch out for the curly brackets and round brackets here. There should just be one round brackets, one curly brackets. This one here is just attached to that one. Now we're going to give ourselves a little bit more room to breathe in here. And what we want to do is just draw this on our canvas. Now, how do we do that? Well, the first thing we need to listen out for is, has the image been loaded yet? If this is quite a large image, it may not even be able to be drawn yet. So we're also going to add in here an if statement. If, round brackets, curly brackets. What do we want to do in our if statement? So we want to check for if this image tag up here has been completed. Has it been loaded yet? So our image dot complete. Has it been loaded yet? Now, at the moment, it's complaining, but don't worry. We're just going to open these curly brackets out. And the next thing we want to do is draw it in a certain place on the page. So for now, we're just going to draw it in maybe about 100 by 100. So for now, we're just going to say on our 2D context, because we got the context in 2D, what we want to do is something. We want to do something to this drawing. We want to draw an image. In this image, there's a few things that go in here. We want to draw in our context this image that we've loaded. Where do we want to draw this image though? Well, for now, what we'll do is a comma, 100 by 100. And we're also going to give it a certain size and width. So the width is 600 and the height is 400 at the moment. So what we should see now is just one image that's always in the same place. So as soon as I move this, it pops out. There we go. Now, obviously what we want is this to be drawn in a certain place at certain times. What do we need to listen out for? Well, with this whole function that we have from here to here, this gives us some more information that passes along from the browser. So it gives us coordinates. Where is the mouse right now? So what we can do is pass those extra bits of information in these round brackets. So in these round brackets, I'm going to make a variable called event. Now this could be called whatever you like. It doesn't need to be called event. It could be called anything. But what I can get as part of this event is two things. Where the mouse is across the page, and where the mouse is up and down the page. So instead of this being always at 100 by 100, what I can do instead is replace 100 with event, or whatever this is called, dot page X. And for this one, I can do event dot page Y. So what we'll get on the page right now is if I move around, this suddenly starts to draw in the right place. Now this is always in the top left corner because I always draw from that top left corner. So how do I shift this over? Well, all I need to do is remove some values from this. So here, what I'm going to do in page X is just remove 200, half the width. In page Y, I'm going to remove 300. So what we'll get from here is just this mouse follows us in the middle of the page like this. So at the moment it's always going to be one image, but what happens if you want to show multiple images? How do we even think about this? Well, the idea of what I want to do is when I click, I want to replace this image. So at the moment, everything is currently fixed to this single image. So how do we go about changing this? Well, at the moment, there is only one image that's been loaded on this page, and we want multiple images to be loaded. So what we're going to do just quickly is we're going to get rid of two things. Now, there might be some complaints. You might see some JavaScript complaints coming up, but what we want to replace it with is what? Well, we want to replace it with a list of images. So how do we do that? We're going to make a new constant called images, which is plural, and this is going to be equal to a list of something or an array of things. Now in my array, what I'm going to put in is quote image1.jpg and then a comma with image2.jpg, and I'm going to fill this out into all four of these. Now at the moment what this will do is it will just make some strings, some list of characters basically, and this actually doesn't load any images into our page. So at the moment this code will not work. So how do we actually load these images in? So we want to turn this list of just sources into real images. So to do that, we're going to use another JavaScript tool, especially for lists in this case, called .map. A map basically takes the input and turns it into something new. So we're going to do something to each image one by one. In our map, what we're going to say is each of these srcs, which is image1, image2, image3, image4.jpg, does something. So we're going to take the original and turn it into something. Now I'm just going to add some space, just make this a little bit easier to read. But what I want to do in here is basically make an image. Now this code will only run between these curly brackets. It won't be able to get it from outside. So what I'm going to do is a constant within here for each one called image. And this is going to be equal to document.createElement. We want to create a new image tag. And just like before, each image tag has a source. And this usually equals something like image1.jpg. But we know what image1.jpg is because it's passed in each time using this src, which is what we've just made up. So we don't want to do this because this is hard coded for images, which are all image1.jpg. We want to replace this with the source each time. And the last thing we want to do is we want to turn the input and send it back out. We want to return back the original image. So this is going to make an image tag for each one of these four things. Now at the moment this is going to do something, but it will still break when we try and do the mouse because we don't know which of these images that we're talking about at the moment. So we need to keep track of something. We need to keep track of which image is the current one. So above this, what I'm going to do is hold the current image. Now I'm going to do this using a variable. It's not a constant. We want something that's going to change. These images don't change. We can't do any code that changes this, but we want to do code that changes which one we're talking about on a click. So we want to do let something equal something. Just like constant equals something, we're going to do I just means the index that we're talking about, the number in the list that we're currently talking about, equal to 0. Now it's 0 because lists count from 0, not 1, like humans. But what we're trying to talk about is the first image in here. Now what I want to do in here is not talk about image, because image doesn't exist outside of this whole box. Image exists in this box, but we can't get to that box. So what we want to do is images and then find which one we're talking about in here. To do that, we're just going to change if image jizz square brackets, because we're talking about a list now, which one of this list are we talking about? The index in this list. Now this is just finding this image, this image, this image, or this image at the moment. And we want to draw that image in the same way. So I'm going to take that code and replace it with this. Now at the moment, what we'll see on our page is basically The same thing as what we had from before. We have things that move, but nothing happening on click. Well, that kind of makes sense because at the moment, nothing happens on click. So what do we want to do on click? Well, what I'm going to do is on any part of the canvas tag, if we click it, then we want to change which image that we're talking about. So underneath it, we want to make a new add event listener. What do we want to attach it to? We want to attach it to the canvas tag. Now, the reason for doing it on the canvas tag and not the document is I still want to click the Instagram link to go to Instagram. I just want to do it on this bit instead. So on this canvas tag, I'm going to add an event, a listener. What do I want to listen out for? A click. What do I do when I've clicked? Well, I want to run some code. I want to run a function, round brackets, curly brackets. What do I want to do? Well, what I want to do is I want to just increase that value of I. The new value of I is going to be equal to the old value of I plus 1. So 0 becomes 1 as soon as I click, which talks about a different one. It talks about image 2. If I click again, it talks about image 3. If I click again, it talks about image 4. So let's see this in action. There we go. We can see this changing. But as soon as I get to the fourth one and click again, it breaks. And that's because there isn't an image 5 that we're talking about. So what we want to do is add a little bit more code in here that says, if we run out of numbers, go back to the start. So how do we do that? Well, I know that there's 4 things in this list. So if this I gets bigger than the amount of things in the list, go to the start. So if brackets, curly brackets. So in the on the round brackets, what we're going to say is if I is bigger or equal to images.length. So if we wanted to add a 5th image, this code would still work. And if it is, then what? I goes back to 0. So it's going to do some calculation in here each time. So let's just see if this works. 1, 2, 3, and there we go, back to the start. So we're basically making something that loops around now. And as you can see, it doesn't really matter how many images that we put in here. The only thing that we need to change in our code now is this list. So if we add a 5th, this is the only place that we need to go because we've set up our code to only listen out for certain numbers, like how long is this list that we're talking about. So at the moment you might notice that as soon as I move my mouse, it draws instantly. And I can't almost shake this off as well. It just sticks to the mouse at all points. Now I've kind of covered this in a previous video called Smooth Movements through JavaScript. And the idea behind that is we have this kind of effect that moves as we kind of move the mouse. So we're going to be using similar code to that in this project. And the idea of what we want to do is not move this exactly to the mouse. Now, what we want to do is kind of trend this towards the mouse, almost like tween it towards the mouse instead. So this needs a little bit of re-engineering. Now, it's not too much, it's not too bad, but basically the issue that we have is we only do things on mouse move. So if I move my cursor really, really quickly, then I'm only doing this next drawing. But we want to have the states in between there as well. So how do we have those states in between that? So I'm going to add in some more code. I'm going to do this above the let I is 0. We're going to add 4 things in here. What we want to do is hold an aim for the X. Now, when we load the page, we might not even have our cursor on the page. So we're just going to say null, which is empty, nothing, or 0. It's kind of like 0 without it being anything at all. And then we're going to have an aim for Y. Where is this meant to go to? But what we have is where our cursor currently was. So we kind of want to hold where the cursor was to trend it towards the aim. So here we're going to do a current X of null and a current Y of null. Now I've kept them all as lets rather than constant because they're going to change. If I move my mouse, this wants to change. Now what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to get rid of this thing that draws. So I'm just going to get rid of this. Now the idea of why is because I want my aim to be where this mouse movement is. So in here, what I'm going to do is say my aim X is exactly where the event page X is. So if I move my mouse really quickly, I want to trend towards my new mouse movement. And the same thing for Y. I want this in 2 directions. Now I'm also going to say if the current X position is empty, just make the current x the same thing. So if current x is equal to null, then that should be the same as well. We want to have a starting point as well. But if it's not, then we want to tween it or transition it between the two. So for now, this is just in an if statement. Now, how do we draw on the page itself? Well, at the moment we did draw on any mouse movement, but we kind of want to draw between mouse movements as well. So we've got a problem. How do we draw things between anything happening on the page, any event happening on the page completely? So we need to think about this in a different way. What we're going to do is going to use this commented out code a little bit later. But for now, what we're going to say is I basically want to make some kind of drawing loop. So I'm going to make a constant called draw. Now, constants and lets don't have to be equal to numbers or lists or strings. They can also be equal to things that do stuff, functions, function, round bracket, curly bracket. And what I'm going to do in here is basically draw the image. Where is it currently? So I need to have some current value first of all. So if current x is a thing. So we'll just leave it as if current x and add curly brackets after that. So if there is a current x that isn't null, then what do we want to do? Well, we want to draw stuff. How do we draw stuff? We use the code from up here. So I'm just going to grab this commented out bit of code. I'm going to take it and put it between here. And I'm going to uncomment it. There we go. Now again, you can just remove those little comments. In the SuperEye editor, it's command and /. And what I've got here is not event page X, but instead I want it to be the current X position and the current Y position. But the thing is, this draw function never runs. We've set it up, but we never ever run it. Where do we want to run this? Well, we want to run this on page load, but we also want to keep running this. We want to run this in a loop that happens over and over and over again. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to run it on page load. Now, to run things on page load, we just don't go inside any boxes. So no boxes like add event listener, for instance. We're just going to keep it outside everything. We're just going to write draw. So this will run this draw function just once, but we want to run this on every single frame. So in my draw function, I'm going to create a loop that runs and runs and runs on every single frame. To do that, we're going to use a JavaScript tool called request animation frame. And here, what we're going to do in animation frame is draw. So this will draw it first time round, and then it will do this bit of work and then go wait for the next frame and then do this again. And then on the next frame, do it again. And on the frame after that, do it again. So what we'll see right now on the page is if I move, it just happens the once. And the reason for that is we never update the aim position. It's just always the current position. Now, how do we change the current position? Well, basically, I want to trend it towards the aim. So what I want to do in my if statement, notice I'm still with if current x because I still want to update things. Well, what do I want to do in here? Well, this depends on the current x position. So my current x, what I want to do is change this to be something. I want to change this to be equal to the old version of current x and some distance between where the current x position is and the new aim position is. So in brackets, I'm going to put in aim x minus current x. So aim x plus current x is just the distance. So this plus minus this plus aim x is equal to aim x. But we don't want to just go straight there. We want to have some distance between them. So what I'm going to do is times this last bit by some small number. The small number I'm going to use is 0.1. So we'll have this in just the one direction at the moment. So if I just see it right now, what we'll get is this will draw in one way. Now notice how this does it based on this speed now. The speed is 0.1. I could change that to be slower if I wanted. So for instance, 0.01 will make this even slower. And there we go, it's kind of trending towards the mouse very, very slowly now. Now, of course, we want to do it in the Y direction too. So in the Y direction, we're going to do current Y is the old version plus the difference between the aim Y minus the current Y. So how far is that gap? But we don't want all of the gap straight away. We kind of want to have some kind of padding or tweening between the two. So we're going to just add this last little bit in here. And what we'll get on the page is this is a kind of slow version. And there we go, it starts the tween between. And if I click again, it will change these images. So if I want to change the speed of this, all I need to do is change these two numbers. Maybe I just want to make it 10 times quicker. So now it should go a lot quicker. So this is how we can make something that looks really, really good. It's only a short amount of JavaScript. There is some complex JavaScript in here, but we've basically got 55 lines of JavaScript in total. We are setting up the canvas tag, setting up the context we want to draw in, setting up our images. When we move our mouse, we want to go to a certain place. If I click, we want to change the image, and I'm going to keep drawing a loop whenever we want to draw the next frame. And then we're going to do some calculations to work out where the next current position should be. And there we have it. It's a few bits of JavaScript. It's not too complex. It's, you know, a little bit of thinking, but once we kind of build these techniques up together, we can build very powerful sites very, very quickly. If you're interested in learning more about these kinds of techniques, join our JavaScript for Designers course where we talk about 6 different projects, all very similar, using lots of fun techniques just like the ones that we've been teaching.